The stars ahead twisted. Commander Elias Varn watched in silence as the fabric of space folded inward, spiraling like water down a drain. The distortion expanded, a shimmering fracture in the dark, and then it split open. Something immense pushed through. "Contact," the sensor officer said, voice tight. "Multiple signatures, no, correction. Hundreds." The bridge of the Resolute Dawn fell quiet. No alarms. No sudden movement. Just a stillness sharpened by disbelief. Varn leaned forward slightly. Visual. The main display shifted, and the unknown fleet resolved into view. They were vast. Not simply large, impossibly large. Each vessel stretched for kilometers, their surfaces composed of interlocking geometric plates that reflected starlight in harsh, angular glints. No curves. No irregularities. Every line precise, deliberate. A formation carved from logic itself. "They're holding position," said Lieutenant Eris, fingers hovering above her console. "No weapons locks detected. No transmissions. They came out of slipstream directly on our border," Varn said. "That's a message. Or a mistake," someone muttered. Varn didn't answer. He studied the formation instead. It was too perfect. The spacing between ships was uniform down to the meter. Not one drifted out of alignment. It felt less like a fleet and more like a machine, every component fixed in place. "Any identification signals?" he asked. "None," Eris replied. "No registry, no beacon, nothing we recognize." Varn's gaze hardened. "Then they don't believe they need one." The words lingered in the air, heavy and unresolved. Seconds passed. Then a tone cut through the silence. "Commander," the communications officer said, eyes widening. "We're receiving a signal." On screen. The display flickered. The stars vanished, replaced by a figure suspended in pale light. The alien stood tall, taller than any human, its form slender yet rigid, as though carved from something harder than flesh. Its skin carried a faint metallic sheen, segmented in subtle patterns that caught the light. Its eyes were narrow, luminous, and entirely devoid of warmth. It regarded them without curiosity. Without emotion. "Translation matrix active," the comm officer whispered. "Processing." The figure spoke. The sound was sharp, layered, like several voices resonating in unison. A moment later, the translation came through, cold and precise. "I am High Executor Threxel Viacor of the Velker Dominion." No greeting. No preamble. Varn straightened. "Commander Elias Varn, United Earth Command. You've entered sovereign space. State your purpose." The alien did not react to the interruption. It continued as if the words had never been spoken. "You are a developing species occupying territory of strategic value. Your expansion disrupts established order." A pause. Not for effect. For certainty. "You will submit to Dominion authority. Your systems will be integrated. Your populations will comply." The bridge seemed to constrict around Varn. He kept his expression neutral. "And if we refuse?" he asked. For the first time, the alien's gaze shifted, just slightly, focusing more directly. "Resistance ensures termination." The words carried no threat. They didn't need to. The fleet behind the figure was enough. Varn held the silence for a moment longer. He felt every pair of eyes on him, waiting. "Your proposal is noted," he said evenly. "We will relay it to United Earth Command. Your response is required within one standard cycle," Threxel replied. "Failure to comply will be interpreted as defiance." The image flickered, then vanished. The stars returned. The fleet remained. No one spoke. Varn exhaled slowly. "Open a channel to Earth. Priority 1. The delay stretched across light years, compressed only by the narrow corridors of slipstream communication. Hours passed. The Velker fleet did not move. It simply waited, an immovable wall at the edge of human space. Inside the Resolute Dawn, tension seeped into everything. Conversations were brief. Movements precise. No one needed to say it aloud. The outcome was already written somewhere ahead of them. "Commander," Eris said at last. "Incoming transmission from UC. Patch it through." The display shifted again, this time revealing a chamber filled with human faces. Admirals. Officials. Civilian representatives. All watching him. "Commander Varn," Admiral Harker said, her voice steady. "You've heard their terms." "Yes, ma'am." "And your assessment?" Varn hesitated for a fraction of a second. Not out of uncertainty, but because he understood what his answer meant. "They're not offering alliance," he said. "They're offering absorption. We won't exist as we are." A murmur moved through the chamber. Harker nodded once. "That aligns with our analysis." A civilian delegate leaned forward. "If we refuse, they'll attack. We've seen their fleet. We can't match that." "No," Barnes said quietly. "We can't." The room fell silent. "Then what are we doing?" the delegate pressed. Harker's gaze hardened. "We're deciding whether humanity survives as itself, or not at all." The words settled with finality. Varn looked at the faces on the screen. Some were afraid. Some resolute. All understood the weight of the moment. "Commander," Harker said, "you are closest to the situation. Your recommendation?" He didn't look away from the display. "If we submit," he said, "we're finished. Maybe not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But eventually, we stop being human." A pause. "And if we fight?" someone asked. Varn's eyes flicked briefly to the distant fleet beyond the hull. "Then we bleed," he said. "But we choose how." The silence that followed was heavier than any answer. Harker inclined her head. "Understood." The transmission cut. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the comm officer spoke, voice barely above a whisper. "Commander, Velker fleet is powering weapons." Varn turned sharply. "What?" "They're targeting multiple coordinates." "Not us." "Where?" The answer came a heartbeat later. "Callisto Reach." Everything inside him went still. "No," he said. The display shifted again, live feed from the colony. Civilian traffic moved through orbit. Lights glowed across the surface. Ordinary life, unaware. A flash cut across the screen. Then another. The sky above the colony ignited. Orbital defenses shattered in seconds. Stations vanished in expanding spheres of fire. The surface followed, precision strikes carving lines of destruction across cities, infrastructure, everything. No warning. No second chance. "Why aren't they waiting?" Eris demanded. Varn didn't answer. He couldn't. He watched as the world he had once called home burned. The transmission ended abruptly. Nothing remained but static. Silence swallowed the bridge. Then, quietly, the comm officer spoke. "Incoming message, from Earth." Varn closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them. "Put it through." This time, there was no image. Only a voice, broadcast across every channel. Clear. Steady. Unyielding. "Since you chose war." A brief pause. "Let us show you how it's done." The message echoed through the ship. Varn stood very still. Then he straightened. "All hands," he said, his voice cutting clean through the silence. "Combat readiness. Effective immediately." Around him, the crew moved, faster now, sharper. Fear was still there, but it had changed. It had direction. Varn turned back to the stars. The Velker fleet remained, vast and perfect. He studied them for a moment longer, then spoke, quietly, to himself. "You should have waited." His gaze hardened. "Now you don't get to choose how this ends." War did not begin with a single battle. It spread. The first reports came in fragments, distress signals cut short, automated alerts from defense grids, silent colonies that simply stopped responding. Within days, the edges of human space lit up with losses. Velker fleets moved with methodical precision, striking key systems, dismantling infrastructure, and advancing without hesitation. They did not chase fleeing ships. They did not linger. They erased and moved on. On the resolute dawn, Commander Elias Varn watched the map change by the hour. Red markers bloomed across the projection, each one a system lost, a population displaced, or worse. Outer perimeter has collapsed, Lieutenant Eris reported. 17 confirmed losses. 4 more unresponsive. Varn stood at the center of the bridge, hands clasped behind his back. Fleet movements? Velker formations are consistent, she said. They're advancing along predicted vectors. No deviation. That's the problem, Varn murmured. He studied the projection. The enemy moved like clockwork, clean lines, perfect coordination. Every engagement followed the same pattern: approach, overwhelm, eliminate. No improvisation. No hesitation. They're not reacting, he said. They're executing. Eris frowned. Isn't that an advantage? It is, Varn replied. Until it isn't. The bridge fell silent again. Bring up the last 3 engagements, he ordered. The display shifted, showing overlapping battle records. Human fleets forming defensive lines. Velker ships advancing in precise formations. Firepower exchanged. Human lines collapsing. The outcomes were identical. They don't adapt, Varn said. They refine. Eris glanced at him. There's a difference? Yes, he said. Adaptation means change. Refinement means repetition. He turned to face the bridge. They believe their method is perfect. That's why they don't alter it. And you think we can exploit that? Someone asked. Varn didn't answer immediately. His gaze lingered on the patterns, the symmetry, the predictability. I think, he said finally, they expect us to fight like them. The next engagement came sooner than expected. A Velker detachment entered the Karthos belt, a dense field of drifting rock and debris left from a shattered moon. No strategic value. No population. Just empty space. Except for the resolute dawn. Range? Varn asked. Closing, Eris replied. They're moving into the belt. Formation? Standard attack wedge. Of course it was. Varn nodded once. All ships hold position. Maintain silence. The small human fleet remained hidden within the debris field. Engines cold. Weapons powered but inactive. To external sensors, they were nothing more than scattered fragments. The Velker ships advanced, their massive hulls gliding between drifting rock with unnatural precision. They did not slow. They did not skin beyond what was necessary. They're not searching, Eris said quietly. They don't expect anything here, Varn replied. He watched the distance close. Timing mattered. Too early, and they'd be detected. Too late, and they'd be destroyed. Mark the lead vessel, he said. Target locked. Wait. The seconds stretched. The Velker formation entered deeper into the field, their lines tightening to maintain cohesion. No, Varn said. The void exploded. Human ships ignited engines simultaneously, emerging from behind asteroids. Mines hidden within the debris field detonated, tearing through the Velker formation. Fragments of rock became projectiles, accelerated by the blasts. The lead Velker ship vanished in a burst of light. Fire! Varn ordered. Weapons flared. Human ships struck fast, targeting exposed sections before the enemy could respond. For the first time, the Velker formation broke. Not entirely, but enough. They're adjusting! Eris shouted. Too late, Varn said. Pull back. All units retreat Vector 3. The human ships scattered, diving into the debris, vanishing as quickly as they had appeared. Behind them, the Velker fleet struggled to reform, their precise lines disrupted. The battle lasted less than 2 minutes. When it ended, 3 Velker ships drifted in pieces. The resolute dawn emerged on the far side of the belt, engines flaring as it rejoined open space. Eris stared at the display. We actually hit them. Varn allowed himself a brief breath. We surprised them. That's a win, she said. It's a beginning. he corrected. Far from the battlefield, High Executor Threxel Vacor observed the aftermath. The projection before him displayed the engagement in perfect detail. Every movement, every deviation from expected patterns. They concealed themselves within debris, one of his officers said. They used environmental factors to mask their presence. Threxel remained silent. They engaged without forming a proper line. The officer continued. Their maneuvers lack structure. Incorrect, Threxel said. The officer hesitated. Executor? They have structure, Threxel said. It is simply unfamiliar. He studied the data again. The timing. The positioning. The withdrawal. They abandoned stability for opportunity, he said. Inefficient. And yet effective, the officer admitted. Threxel's gaze sharpened. Temporary effectiveness does not equal superiority. He turned away from the projection. Increase pressure on all fronts. Overwhelm their capacity to respond. Yes, Executor. They will return to predictable behavior under sufficient stress, Threxel said. All systems do. They didn't. Over the following weeks, human forces changed. They stopped meeting the Velker head-on. They stopped defending fixed positions when the cost was too high. Instead, they struck where the enemy was weakest, then disappeared before retaliation could arrive. Convoys vanished in transit. Isolated ships were picked apart. False signals led Velker fleets into empty space. They're learning, Eris said during one briefing. Every engagement, they try something new. That's the point, Varn replied. If we repeat ourselves, they'll crush us. But we're still losing, she said. Varn didn't argue. The map still bled red. Entire systems fell despite their efforts. Civilian evacuations struggled to keep pace with the advance. Every victory came with a cost. We're buying time, he said. For what? Varn looked at the display, then beyond it, at something not yet visible. For the moment they make a mistake. That moment had not yet come. Instead, something else did. Commander, the calm officer said, tension creeping into his voice. Incoming transmission. Velker origin. Put it through. Threxel's image appeared once more unchanged. Untouched by the war unfolding around him. Human resistance continues, he said. Your methods are irregular. Varn met his gaze. You started this. You prolong it, Threxel replied. Your losses are increasing. Your territory diminishes. And yet, Varn said, we're still here. A pause. You cannot sustain this approach, Threxel said. It lacks cohesion. Varn's expression didn't shift. That's what you think. The transmission ended without further exchange. Eris exhaled. He doesn't understand us. No, Varn said. He doesn't. He turned back to the star map. That's why we might survive. Hours later, new data arrived. Velker fleet movements, larger than before. Multiple formations converging across several systems. Eris stared at the projections. This isn't a response. It's a push. Varn nodded slowly. They're done testing us. What does that mean? He didn't look away from the display. It means they're going to try and end this. The war changed shape. Until now, the Velker had advanced like a blade, clean, direct, unstoppable. Now they moved like a hammer. Multiple fleets converged across human territory, not probing, not testing, but crushing everything in their path. They didn't chase. They didn't hesitate. They struck with overwhelming force, then continued forward, leaving nothing capable of resistance behind. On the resolute dawn, the tactical display burned with motion. Red vectors stretched across half a dozen systems, each one advancing in tight formation. They've shifted, Lieutenant Eris said, her voice low. No more isolated strikes. They're pushing everywhere at once. Varn stood with his hands braced against the command console, watching the projections update in real time. They've decided we're not worth studying anymore. They're trying to end it, she said. Yes. A pause settled between them. Can we stop them? Eris asked. Varn didn't answer right away. He tracked the incoming formations, calculating distances, response times, fleet positions. The numbers didn't align. No, he said finally. Not directly. The bridge remained silent. Then what do we do? Someone asked. Varn straightened. We slow them down. We make them bleed for every system. And we choose where we fight. He turned toward the display and expanded a sector near the center of human space. Orion Gate. Eris frowned. That's a major transit hub. Exactly, Varn said. If they take it, they control the corridor to inner colonies. And if we hold it? We buy time, he replied. Enough to regroup. Enough to plan something better. She studied the projection. They'll send everything they have. I know. Then why commit? Varn's expression didn't change. Because if we don't, the war ends on their terms. Orion Gate burned before the first shot was fired. Ships crowded the system. Human vessels forming defensive lines around the central relay station, their engines flaring as they took position. Civilian transports scattered, fleeing deeper into protected space. The Velker arrived without warning. Slipstream ruptures tore open the darkness, one after another, until the void itself seemed to fracture. Warships emerged in perfect formation, their massive frames blotting out the stars. Contact confirmed, Eris said. Multiple fleets. They're not even trying to conceal their numbers. They don't need to, Varn replied. The Velker formation expanded, ships aligning into layered wedges, each one overlapping fields of fire. No gaps. No hesitation. Orders, Commander? The weapons officer asked. Varn took a breath. Hold until they commit. They're already committing, Eris said. Not yet, he said. Wait. The distance closed. Human ships held their positions, weapons primed, engines ready. The silence stretched, tight as a drawn wire. Then the Velker fired. Beams of coherent energy lanced across the void, striking the outer defense line. Shields flared, buckled, and collapsed. 3 ships vanished in the first volley. Return fire! Varn ordered. The system erupted. Human ships broke formation, diving and weaving, firing in bursts instead of sustained lines. Missiles streaked through space, splitting into smaller clusters, forcing the Velker to adjust targeting priorities. For a moment, just a moment, the advance slowed. Direct hit on their flank! Eris called out. A Velker cruiser shuddered under concentrated fire, its hull fracturing along precise seams. Maintain pressure, Varn said. Don't let them stabilize. But they did. The Velker formation shifted, tightening, compensating for the disruption. Their fire became more focused, more precise. They're adapting, Eris said. No, Varn replied. They're correcting. Another volley struck. A human destroyer split apart, its reactor igniting in a brief, violent bloom. Left wing collapsing! The tactical officer shouted. Reinforce, Varn said. We don't have reserves. The words hung in the air. Varn clenched his jaw. Then we hold with what we have. The battle intensified. Ships darted through the chaos, some vanishing into debris, others breaking apart under sustained fire. The Velker pressed forward, their lines unbroken despite the damage. They're pushing straight through, Eris said. They're not even slowing down. That's the point, Varn said. A transmission cut through the noise. Commander, this is Orion Gate Control. We can't hold much longer. They're targeting the relay. Varn's eyes flicked to the central structure, a massive construct anchoring the system's transit routes. If it fell, the entire region would fracture. Evacuate, he said. We're still operational. That's an order, Varn cut in. Pull your personnel out. A pause. Understood. The connection ended. Moments later, the relay station erupted in light. The Velker barrage tore through its core, shattering the structure into drifting fragments. The system's network collapsed instantly. Orion Gate is gone, Eris said, her voice barely audible. Varn didn't respond. Commander, the tactical officer said, we're taking heavy losses. If we stay. I know, Varn said quietly. He looked at the display, at the ship still fighting, still holding, despite everything. All units, he said, his voice steady. Fall back to secondary coordinates. Maintain pressure during withdrawal. You're calling it? Eris asked. We've done what we can, he said. Now we survive. The order spread across the fleet. Ships began to disengage, breaking contact in staggered movements, covering each other as they withdrew. Not all of them made it. Explosions marked the retreat, brief flashes swallowed by the void. When it ended, Orion Gate was silent. The war room aboard the Resolute Dawn felt smaller than before. Holographic displays lined the walls, each one showing fragments of the conflict, loss reports, damaged fleets, shifting front lines. Varn stood at the center, unmoving. We lost Orion Gate, Eris said. And 3 fleets. He nodded. They're advancing faster now, she continued. Without the relay, we can't respond as quickly. I know. She hesitated. We're not winning. Varn turned toward her. We're still here, he said. For how long? She asked. He didn't answer. The room fell silent. Finally, Eris spoke again. What are we missing? Varn looked back at the displays. At the patterns. The movements. They don't change, he said. They adjust, she corrected. Within limits, he said. They refine. They optimize. But they don't rethink. He stepped closer to the projection, isolating a Velker fleet movement. Every action is coordinated, he said. Every ship aligned. Every decision synchronized. That's why they're winning, Eris said. Yes, Varn replied. But it's also why they're vulnerable. She frowned. How? Varn brought up a series of intercepted signals, Velker communications, tightly structured, flowing through specific nodes. They rely on centralized command, he said. Orders don't originate at the ship level. They're distributed. Eris leaned in. So if you disrupt that, they lose cohesion, Varn said. Even briefly, it's enough. She stared at the data. You're saying their strength is a single point of failure. I'm saying they built their entire system on control, Varn replied. Take that away, and they have to think for themselves. And you think they can't? Varn met her gaze. I think they've never had to. The implication settled heavily. That means going into their territory, Eris said. Deep. Yes. That's suicide. Only if we fail, Varn said. She let out a breath. And if we don't? The stars ahead did not belong to humanity. Commander Elias Varn stood on the bridge of the Resolute Dawn, watching the darkness where Velker territory began. No warning beacons marked the boundary. No patrol signals. Just empty space that felt occupied. Slipstream corridor is stable, Lieutenant Eris said. Window will hold for 30 seconds. That's all we need, Varn replied. Behind them, a handful of ships formed a loose formation, nothing like the rigid lines of the Velker. Frigates, corvettes, a pair of modified carriers stripped for speed and stealth. Every hull carried the scars of earlier engagements. This wasn't a fleet. It was a risk. All units, Varn said, opening the channel. Once we enter, emissions stay minimal. No active scans unless absolutely necessary. We move quiet, we move fast. A chorus of acknowledgments followed. Eris glanced at him. Still time to turn back. No, Varn said. There isn't. The slipstream aperture opened, a distortion in space, flickering like a wound. Without hesitation, the Resolute Dawn surged forward, the rest of the strike group close behind. The stars vanished. They emerged into silence. Velker space felt different. The darkness seemed deeper, as if even the light moved more carefully. Distant stars glimmered, but the emptiness between them stretched farther than it should. Passive scans only, Varn said. Eris nodded. I'm picking up signal traffic, tight band, encrypted. Directional. Command relays, Varn said. Track them. Data began to assemble across the display, lines of communication threading between distant points, converging toward a central region. That's our target, Varn said. And everything between us and it? Eris asked. He didn't look away. Doesn't matter. The strike group moved, engines running at minimal output, gliding through space like ghosts. They avoided main transit lanes, slipping between patrol routes, following the faint threads of Velker communication. Hours passed. Then, contact, Eris said. 2 Velker cruisers on an intercept vector. They've detected something. Varn's jaw tightened. They're not supposed to. They're not reacting yet, she said. Just adjusting course. Then we stay ahead of them, Varn said. Increase speed. Stay dark. The ships accelerated, pushing the limits of silent movement. Behind them, the Velker cruisers shifted slightly, correcting their trajectory. They know something's here, Eris said. Not what? Varn replied. Not yet. He focused on the display. The network of signals was growing clearer now, converging into a dense cluster of transmissions. Almost there, he said. The command nexus revealed itself gradually. At first, it was just another signal concentration. Then shapes emerged, structures orbiting a central hub, all arranged with geometric precision. Smaller nodes linked together, feeding into the core. And surrounding it. Fleet presence confirmed, Eris said. Heavy. Velker warships encircled the nexus, their formations layered, interlocking fields of fire overlapping in perfect coverage. They're protecting it, she said. They're depending on it, Varn corrected. He studied the layout. Direct assault was impossible. Even with surprise, they would be destroyed before reaching the core. We don't hit the ships, he said. We hit the network. Eris nodded slowly. Ghost signal. Exactly. He opened the fleet channel. All units prepare for insertion. We're not engaging directly. We're targeting their communications grid. How? One pilot asked. Varn allowed himself a faint, humorless smile. By speaking their language. The operation began with silence. Small drones launched from the strike group, drifting toward the outer nodes. Each carried modified transmitters, designed to interface with Velker systems. They're detecting the probes, Eris said. Minor alerts. Let them, Varn said. They'll assume it's debris. The drones reached their targets. One by one, they attached to the nodes, their systems beginning to work. Initializing signal injection, Eris said. We're inside. Varn watched as the network lit up with activity. Human code flowed into Velker channels, mimicking their structure, blending with their commands. Start small, he said. Adjust minor orders. Change timing. Done. Across the network, subtle shifts began. A patrol changed course slightly earlier than expected. A formation adjusted spacing by a fraction. Nothing significant. Yet. They're not noticing, Eris said. Because it fits their logic, Varn replied. Keep going. The changes grew bolder. Orders delayed. Signals rerouted. Coordination slipped by degrees. Then, they're responding, Eris said. Corrections coming through. Push harder, Varn said. Flood the network. The drones surged, transmitting overlapping commands, creating conflicts within the system. Velker ships began receiving contradictory instructions, their precise coordination unraveling. They're losing synchronization, Eris said, disbelief creeping into her voice. That's our opening, Varn said. All units, move! The strike group broke cover. Engines flared to full power as human ships surged toward the nexus. Velker defenses reacted instantly, but their responses lacked the precision they once held. Ships moved too early. Others hesitated. Fire patterns overlapped, leaving gaps. They're out of sync, Eris said. Not for long, Varn replied. We finish this now. Weapons ignited. Human ships targeted the outer nodes, destroying them in rapid succession. Each loss deepened the confusion within the Velker network. A transmission cut through the chaos. Threxel Vacor appeared on the display, his expression unchanged, but his gaze sharper. You have penetrated restricted space, he said. This action is illogical. Varn met his eyes. So is underestimating us. You rely on disorder, Threxel said. It cannot sustain victory. Varn shook his head. You built your entire war on control. The Velker leader's gaze narrowed. And now, Varn said, you don't have it. The transmission cut. Commander, Eris said urgently. They're stabilizing. Local control systems coming online. Then we end it, Varn said. He focused on the central hub, the core of the network. All remaining ships, he said, opening the channel. Concentrate fire on the Nexus. We break that, and the rest falls apart. That's a kill zone, a pilot warned. I know, Varn said. We go anyway. He pushed the Resolute Dawn forward, straight into the heart of the defenses. The final approach was chaos. Velker ships fired without coordination, their attacks overlapping, leaving openings but still deadly. Human ships wove through the barrage, some breaking apart under direct hits. Shields failing! Eris shouted. Keep us moving, Varn said. Explosions lit the void as Allied ships took the brunt of the fire, clearing a path. We're losing them, Eris said, her voice tight. I know, Varn replied. The Nexus filled the viewport, vast, intricate, the center of everything. Target locked, the weapons officer said. Fire! The Resolute Dawn unleashed everything it had. Beams struck the core, tearing into its structure. Other ships followed, their fire converging on the same point. The Nexus shuddered. Then it broke. Light erupted outward as the central system collapsed, its structure fracturing, energy spilling into space. Across the battlefield, Velker ships faltered. Some drifted. Others fired wildly, without coordination. They've lost it, Eris whispered. Varn watched the display as the network went dark. It's over, he said. The aftermath was quiet.